I heard my son say it in the middle of Christmas night. Get out, go beg on the street like the worthless woman you are. Those words weren't meant for a stranger, they were meant for my wife, the woman who had taken care of this family for 10 years, the woman who held his hand when he had a fever at 3, who paid for his first car from her own savings, who he called mom even though she wasn't his birth mother. When I came up from the wine cellar, the door was already shut. Snow had covered the porch in white silence, and Martha's wool scarf lay alone on the frozen floor. I stood there and understood a cruel paradox. The house I paid for every month, the house I had built from nothing, was the same house that had just thrown my family out into a Colorado blizzard on Christmas night. Before I go on, please subscribe to the channel, tap like, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I read every single one. Your messages give me the strength to keep telling stories like this. Now let me take you back to that night, the moment when everything first drifted off course. I didn't go back inside. I stood still for a few seconds, long enough for the cold to cut through my coat and remind me this wasn't a passing misunderstanding. 23 degrees, wind gusting, snow falling steadily. Martha stood by the porch railing, her hands folded tight against her chest. She wasn't crying. That frightened me more than tears ever could. Tears mean there's still hope. But Martha had gone somewhere else, somewhere behind her eyes where the pain was too deep to reach the surface. She stared at the wool scarf on the ground as if it no longer belonged to her. As if she had just realized that after 10 years of giving she had become invisible. I picked up the scarf, shook off the snow, wrapped it back around her shoulders. Then I guided her to the car. She didn't resist, she didn't speak. She just walked. No one inside opened the door. No apology came from the living room. No footsteps rushed to the entrance. Just Christmas music drifting from somewhere deep inside the house. Silent night, steady, cheerful, and colder than the wind. The drive to the hotel was silent. Martha tried to say something twice, then stopped. I knew what she wanted to ask. Where did I go wrong? But I refused to let that question exist. It wasn't her failure, it was his. And mine for not seeing the poison spreading. The hotel was a small Marriott near downtown. A young man named Carlos checked us in. He didn't ask why we had no luggage. He just handed me the key and said, "Merry Christmas." I almost laughed. Martha sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulders sinking as if she had finally set down a burden she'd carried for far too long. I poured her a glass of warm water. No alcohol, no advice, just my presence. Sometimes silence is the only thing that keeps a person from falling apart. When Martha drifted off to sleep, I sat in the chair by the window. Snow was still falling. I thought about the party that had been cut short, unfinished plates of turkey, half-spoken wishes, the fireplace burned down to ash. I thought about Brandon. I remembered him as a boy, maybe 7 years old, hands covered in paint, proudly showing me a drawing of his dream house. A house with a big yard and a dog and a room for when Dad gets old. I remembered Martha teaching him to ride a bike, holding the seat, running beside him, letting go when he didn't notice. He fell once and scraped his knee. She carried him inside, cleaned the wound, kissed his forehead. He said, "I love you, Mom." Stepmom, Mom. That night I understood that some foundations look strong but have been hollow for a very long time. Near midnight, my phone vibrated, not Brandon. Notification from the home security system. Motion detected in my study. I opened the camera app. The image was clear, HD night vision. Brandon and Kimberly, his wife of 2 years, walked into my study like it belonged to them. No hesitation, no fear. Kimberly went through my desk drawers. Brandon opened the locked file cabinet with a key I never gave him. They spoke in low voices. I turned on the audio. "Once the house is transferred, we can sell it within 60 days. Market in Aspen is hot. Dad, he won't fight. He'll be too busy trying to save her. That's his weakness." I watched for 4 minutes, then I turned off the screen. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, thinking about forged signatures and stolen futures. The woman beside me, the one who had given everything, had no idea what I had just seen. The next morning I woke before dawn. Martha was still asleep. I left a note on the nightstand. "Went to take care of something. Back by noon. Love you." I drove back to the house while the sky was still dim. The snow had stopped. No one stopped me at the gate. The front door was unlocked. They hadn't even bothered to lock it. I sat at my desk and checked the access logs. 14 visits in 6 months, always at night, always when I was out of town or distracted. I took screenshots. I saved copies to 3 different drives. I called my bank and froze every secondary account. I called a lawyer named Diane who had never lost a case. I didn't tell Martha any of this. Not yet. She was still healing from the words on Christmas night. I wouldn't add more weight to her shoulders until I had to. That afternoon I reviewed the footage again. This time I listened to everything. 47 minutes of conversation. They talked about timing, about offshore accounts, about how I would be too broken to fight back once Martha left me. I sat in the dark after the screen went black. Not to mourn, to accept a hard truth. That Christmas night wasn't the cause. It was only the moment everything finally came into the light. 3 days passed before I made my first move. Martha and I stayed at the hotel. She asked once where we were going to live. I said, "Somewhere warm." She nodded and didn't push further. That trust, that absolute, unquestioning trust, was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. On the fourth morning, I woke at 4:30 a.m. I dressed in silence, kissed Martha's forehead, and left before the sun rose. I didn't go to the house. I went to the bank. Janet, who had managed my accounts for 12 years, greeted me with a worried smile. I laid out the documents, the forged signatures, the access logs, the recordings. I asked her to confirm control. She did. Then I said the words I had been rehearsing for days. Cancel the automatic payments on the Manhattan apartment. Freeze all secondary credit cards. Initiate a recovery process for any funds transferred without my authorization in the past 6 months. Janet hesitated. Mr. Harris, that will trigger. I know what it will trigger, do it. She did. 30 minutes later, I walked out of the bank with a confirmation slip in my pocket. Thin paper, heavy weight, my hand didn't shake. I called the credit card companies next, then a security firm, then my lawyer. Each call was short, each call was cold. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a fire, it burns hot and dies fast. What I felt was something else, something steady, something that would outlast any tantrum. This was a strike that made no sound. By noon, the silence began to move. Brandon called, I didn't answer. He called again and again. On the fourth call, I picked up. His voice was tight, not angry, confused. Dad, my cards aren't working. The apartment the bank said something about. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. With lawyers present, 2 o'clock, the hotel conference room. I hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, I returned to the Aspen house with the security team, 2 men in dark jackets, polite, professional. Brandon and Kimberly were in the living room watching TV. They looked up when we walked in. I handed them copies of the notice. You have 2 hours to pack, the house is being reorganized. Kimberly laughed. What kind of performance is this? I didn't answer. The security team worked quietly. Belongings were packed into suitcases. Nothing was thrown, no one shouted. The politeness made everything feel colder than the snow outside. Brandon made calls. His phone kept hitting busy signals or automated messages. This account has been temporarily restricted. Kimberly's tone shifted, first mockery, then pleading, then blame. This is your fault, she hissed at Brandon. You should have been more careful. I watched from the doorway. When money flows, people speak with one voice. When it stops, voices begin to separate. 2 hours later, they stood on the front porch with their bags. The neighbors watched from their windows. Brandon looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since Christmas night. His eyes were red. Dad, he said. I didn't answer. I closed the door. That evening, Martha and I had dinner in the hotel restaurant. She ordered salmon. I ordered steak. We talked about nothing, the weather, the news, a book she was reading. She didn't ask about the house. She didn't ask about Brandon. She just held my hand across the table. After dinner, we walked through the hotel lobby. The Christmas decorations were still up, a tree, garlands, fake snow. Martha stopped in front of the tree and said, I used to think Christmas was about family. Now I think it's about who shows up when the family falls apart. I didn't have an answer for that, so I just put my arm around her. That night my phone buzzed with a message from Brandon. Can we please talk, alone? I typed back, tomorrow with lawyers, no exceptions. The meeting happened the next day, 2 o'clock sharp. Brandon came alone. Kimberly had left that morning, packed her things and taken a flight to her parents' house in Ohio. No goodbye, no note, just gone. The conference room was bare, white walls, a long table, nothing to hold on to but the truth. Deanne, my lawyer, laid everything out. The surveillance footage, the access logs, the forged signatures, the recordings of Brandon and Kimberly discussing offshore accounts. I watched Brandon's face as each piece was placed on the table. He didn't deny anything. He didn't make excuses. He just lowered his head and said, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry. Diane was clear, sign a waiver of inheritance rights and return the misused funds, or let the matter go further. Brandon picked up the pen, his hand was shaking. He signed line by line. When he finished, he set the pen down and exhaled like someone who had just climbed a mountain and realized the top wasn't worth it. Afterward, we stood outside in the cold. Snow was falling again. Brandon looked at me with red eyes and said, I don't expect you to forgive me, I just want you to know I never meant for Martha to get hurt. I looked at this man, this boy who had painted dream houses and scraped his knees and called Martha Mom, and I said, forgiveness isn't something you ask for, it's something you earn. Go live your life without the money, find out who you are, maybe one day we'll talk again. He nodded, then he walked away into the snow. months that followed were quiet, not the tense quiet of waiting for the next blow, the quiet of a room after everything has been cleared out. Martha and I sold the Aspen house first. It went to a tech executive from California. He paid cash. I signed the papers without looking back. Some places exist only to teach you a lesson and then let you go. The Manhattan apartment went next. I didn't keep any of the money, not out of virtue, but because I didn't want those walls to keep reminding me of what went wrong. I called Martha into the living room of our hotel suite one evening. The snow had finally melted outside. I told her my plan: sell everything, use the money to start a scholarship fund, in your name, for children who have no one to rely on. Martha looked at me for a long time. She didn't ask why it would carry her name. She just said, "If this is what you believe is right, I'll stand with you." The foundation was created quietly, no launch event, no press release, just a transfer of funds and a signed charter. The final amount was larger than I expected, almost $2 million, yet the feeling was the opposite of heavy. It was light, as if a weight had finally been set down where it belonged. We didn't think of it as redemption. We thought of it as using what remained to build something that couldn't be stolen. We left Colorado on a bright morning in March. No snow, no ceremony, just a car and a road ahead. We drove south through New Mexico, through Texas, through the flatlands and the hills, stopped when we were tired, continued when we were ready. No tight schedule, no grand destination. We ended up in a small coastal town in Florida. Quiet, modest, no one knew who we were. That felt good. The new house wasn't large, 2 bedrooms, a front porch, sea air drifting through every afternoon. Martha planted flowers in pots along the railing. I fixed the fence and painted the shutters. Simple work, done with our own hands. In the mornings, I walked to the beach. Damp sand under my feet, steady waves. I thought about the years behind me, about the decisions I once believed were right. I didn't blame myself. I didn't forgive myself either. I accepted that I had done the best I could with what I knew at the time, and when I knew more, I changed. One afternoon, Martha asked if I had regrets. I thought for a moment and said, "There are things I wish I had seen sooner, but regret is a heavy word. I don't carry it anymore." She nodded and took my hand. We watched the sun sink lower over the water, no need to say anything else. The scholarship fund began operating in the fall. We received letters from the first recipients, high school students who had lost parents, who had aged out of foster care, who had no one. They wrote about their dreams: nursing, teaching, engineering. They wrote about how this money meant they could sleep at night. I read every letter, then I put them in a drawer. I didn't hang them on the wall. I didn't need reminders. It was enough to know that somewhere out there, some children would have one more small chance. Brandon kept his word. He moved to a small town in Montana. I heard from a friend it was near Bozeman. He got a job at a hardware store, early shifts, late shifts. No one reported this to me officially. The information arrived on its own, like scattered fragments. He sent me a text every few months. "Thinking of you, hope you're well," I replied with one word: same. Kimberly filed for divorce 6 weeks after the meeting. I wasn't surprised. Some relationships are built on temporary ground. When that ground collapses, everything goes with it. One evening, a letter arrived, handwritten, postmarked from Montana. I opened it slowly. Brandon's handwriting was messier than I remembered, shakier. He wrote about his job, his small apartment above a garage, his therapy. He wrote about how hard it was to live without the safety net he had taken for granted. And he wrote this: "I understand now, Dad. Money doesn't make a family, love does, and I forgot that. I forgot that Martha chose to love me when she didn't have to. I forgot that you worked every day to give me a life I never deserved. I was blind, and I'm sorry. I'll keep saying it until I don't have to say it anymore, because it becomes the truth of who I am." I read the letter 3 times, then I put it in the drawer with the scholarship papers. That night, Martha and I walked on the beach. The moon was full. The waves were quiet. She asked, "Do you ever think about him?" "Every day," I said. She squeezed my hand. "So do I." We didn't say anything else. We just walked. The past stayed where it belonged, not erased but no longer chasing us, and that was enough. One morning, about a year after we moved to Florida, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Dad." It was Brandon. His voice was different, clearer. No panic, no pleading. "I'm here," I said. "I just wanted to tell you I'm okay, I'm really okay. I have a small place, a dog, a job that doesn't pay much but doesn't make me feel worthless, and I've been going to therapy. I'm learning to be honest with myself." I listened, I didn't interrupt. "I'm not asking to come back," he continued. "I know that's not possible right now, maybe not ever. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying, and I wanted to ask, could you tell Martha I'm sorry? Not for the money, for the words, for telling her to beg on the street. She didn't deserve that, she never did." I felt something shift in my chest, not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer than the cold I had been carrying. "I'll tell her," I said. We were quiet for a moment, then Brandon said, "Thanks, Dad, for not giving up on me completely." "I haven't given up," I said. "I'm just standing at a distance. That's where I need to be right now." "I understand." He hung up. I stood by the window looking out at the ocean. The waves were steady. The sky was blue. I thought about the Christmas night, the slammed door, the scarf in the snow, the years of silence that followed. I thought about the hard decisions I had made, the frozen accounts, the signed waivers, the sold houses. I thought about the scholarship fund, the letters from children I would never meet, the small good that had come from so much pain. Martha came up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. "Who was that?" "Brandon," I said. Her hand tightened slightly. "How is he?" "He's trying." She nodded. "That's all any of us can do." That night, I sat on the porch and looked up at the stars. The Florida sky was clear, nothing like the snow-filled nights of Colorado. I thought about the family I had built, the family I had lost, the family I was still trying to understand. Family, in the end, isn't something held together by money or power. It's not about deeds and titles and inheritance. It's about how people choose to treat one another when things are no longer convenient, when the money is gone, when the doors close, when all that's left is the truth of who we really are. I don't know if Brandon and I will ever be close again. I don't know if Martha will ever fully heal from the words spoken on that Christmas night. But I know this, the silence between us now is different. It's not the silence of anger or shame. It's the silence of two people who have finally stopped pretending and are learning slowly to just be. The waves rolled in ahead of me. The past stayed behind, not erased but no longer chasing. And that was enough to begin a new morning. The end. Thank you for listening to my story. If it gave you something to think about, please subscribe to the channel, tap like, and share it so others can hear it too. Every bit of your support helps stories like this continue to be told. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I read every single one. And remember, family isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn every single day. Peace to you and yours.